Welcome to The Other Side, Mississippi Today's political podcast. I'm your host, Adam Ganishow. The Other Side lets you hear directly from the most connected players and observers across the spectrum of politics in Mississippi. From breaking news to political strategy to interviews with candidates and elected officials, we'll bring you facts, perspectives, and context that helps you cut through the noise and understand all sides of the story.
I'm Taylor Vance, a political reporter at Mississippi Today, and joined with me is my esteemed colleague, Bobby Harrison. Bobby, how are you?
What does esteem mean?
I'll let our listeners make their mind up on what that means. But Bobby, I think we need to behave today because today we have a sitting Supreme Court justice here visiting with us today. I think this is the first time that we have a sitting judge as our guest. We've had some former judges.
That's right.
And we've had some senior status judges before, but I think this is the first time we have a sitting justice. Today we have Mississippi Supreme Court Justice Jim Kitchens. Justice Kitchens is a presiding justice on the Supreme Court, and he's been a district attorney before. He's been a defense attorney, private practice attorney, but he was first elected to the state Supreme Court in 2018. 2008, I apologize. And he is running for a third term on our state's highest court. So, Justice Kitchens, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, Justice Kitchens, I think probably the best place to start our conversation today is, do you mind just explaining really why you decided to run for another term for to be a justice on the state Supreme Court?
Well, I feel good. I know what I'm doing. I enjoy what I'm doing. I've been there, as you say, 2 terms, and I think I'm at the top of my game right now. So I think I'm doing some good for the people of the state of Mississippi, which was the reason I ran in the first place back in 2008.
Yes, sir.
Justice Kitchen, you're in a runoff with the runoff would be, the election would be the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
And your opponent in that runoff is Neshoba County State Senator Jenifer Branning. Now, she's coming from another branch of government, if you will. What do you feel you offer to the Supreme Court that she does not offer?
I feel that I offer a vast amount of experience in the judicial system. I've been in the judicial system most of my life. And what we do at the Supreme Court is we never have trials. Many people think we do, but we don't have trials. We never have witnesses. We don't have a court reporter. We don't have testimony there at all. Everything that we see at the Supreme Court has already been tried somewhere else in the state of Mississippi. I did some analysis lately of our caseload. Well over 70% of our cases come from the circuit courts of the state of Mississippi. Those are our major trial courts. Now, we, of course, have other important courts. The Chancery Court's important, and the county courts in some of the counties, the Court of Appeals, justice courts, municipal courts. Every one of them has a role in our state judicial system. But the circuit court is really the workhorse trial court that we have. And Senator Branning is a fine person, I'm sure. I did not know her before I met her on the campaign trail, but I don't know anything about her, but something good is all I've heard. But I do know from talking to people over in the area where she lives that she does not try cases in the circuit court. I haven't been able to find anyone that said they ever saw her try a case in the circuit court in the 20 years she's been a lawyer. That's not a criticism of her personally. Lawyers do all sorts of different things. I understand that Senator Branning is a real estate lawyer and that she does loan closings as her primary work as a lawyer. And I know she does a few other things too, but that's the way she makes her living as a lawyer. And there's nothing at all wrong with that. That's honorable, good work. And somebody's got to do it, and that's what she does. But Senator Branning would be at a serious disadvantage at the Supreme Court reviewing circuit court cases. I'm sure she has an academic knowledge about the circuit courts that she perhaps learned in law school, or maybe she's been to some seminars, but she does not have the hands-on trial experience that I have, and that's so important to the work that I do. I don't think I could function very well as a Supreme Court justice if I hadn't spent decades in the circuit courts of the state of Mississippi.
Yeah, Justice Kitchens, I think it may be helpful for our listeners to know, sort of, as you just said, when the Supreme Court receives cases, it is an appeal from a lower court, and the justices on the court are typically looking to see if lower court judges made a correct ruling, or either y'all are trying to interpret some question of constitutionality. If a lower court made a correct determination or a wrong ruling on a case. So I guess with that being said, how would you describe sort of your judicial philosophy when you receive a case, when you're looking at something? What is sort of your philosophy and your thought process? How do you work through some of those cases when they come before you?
Well, it's really a complicated process, but in its simplest terms, my philosophy is to try to do the right thing. And the right thing is to follow the law and apply the applicable law to the question that's before us. Typically, the question is whatever the losing party raises on appeal. We don't look for errors to try to help anybody, try to help one side or the other. We look to see what it is they are complaining about. What do they say went wrong at the trial? And we typically confine ourselves to that issue or those issues. Now, sometimes something will jump out at us that wasn't raised, and that's rare, but sometimes we, as we say, sua sponte, on our own, we will raise something that is an obvious error that caused prejudice to one party or the other in the trial.
Yeah, Taylor and I were talking about using that term just the other day.
I don't know if that's true, Bob. We say a lot of crazy things in the newsroom, probably, but I would imagine that's a Latin term. We don't say just a whole lot of Latin.
Well, when I was a boy down in Copiah County, my dad had me feeding hogs every day, and we'd always say "suey," but we didn't say "sponte" with it.
Yeah. Taylor was up in Grenada, and I was in Jones County. We didn't use those. We didn't use that very often either. No. But we did use some terms that probably other people wouldn't recognize. She, in her campaign ads and everything, Senator Branning describes herself as a constitutional conservative. How would you describe how would you describe yourself?
Well, the easiest thing for me to do is say, I think I'm the same thing. Yeah. But I think she and I may be talking about something different. I don't know what she has in mind. But I've been trying to conserve the Constitution the whole time I've been a lawyer. And I think if you're a conservative, that means you want to preserve or conserve something that's good. Now, I remember in the Civil Rights era, when that word conservative meant something else. It meant Jim Crow segregationist, and people like Governor Barnett and others back then threw that word conservative around a lot, and it kind of became a code word. But when I say that I want to conserve something, I'm talking about the Bill of Rights of the U.S. Constitution, and it has a counterpart in the Mississippi Constitution. That's what I want to conserve.
Something that I found very interesting is the state Republican Party has played a pretty active role in her campaign. They've contributed, I think they've contributed money. I know they've endorsed her. There have been party leaders in the state GOP get behind her. And while I know there's been federal court rulings that have cleared the way for political parties to endorse judicial candidates, Do you think that should happen? Do you think that that's proper? Or I guess what are your thoughts about political parties endorsing judicial candidates that are nonpartisan or supposed to be nonpartisan?
I very well remember when judicial candidates ran in party primaries, and that went on for a long time. Some states still do that. I think they do that in Alabama and maybe Texas and some of the other states. But years ago, back in the mid-'90s, our legislature changed that in Mississippi. I have to recall that the Republicans were really for that. It was their idea, and they liked it back then. Some of them don't like it now. I say they. I'm not in any party at all now. Haven't been for years. I'm a nonpartisan justice. But I think the concept was to try to keep politics out of the judicial selection process as much as possible. Many things have been considered for judicial selection. Of course, in the federal system, we have appointments by the president and with advice and consent of the Senate. It's still highly political in the appointment process. But I think in the spirit of what was attempted to be accomplished back then was to take politics out of the judicial selection process as much as possible. The Republican Party has every right to contribute money to whomever they wish, and I'm sure they are doing so in a lawful manner. So I don't have any criticism of them for that, but I really don't think it's in keeping with the spirit of trying to keep politics out of the judicial selection process, and I think that the more we can do in that direction, the better off we all are.
Justice Kitchens, I think I'm probably in a better position to ask you this next question than Taylor is. But some people have tried to make an issue of your age. But you kind of referenced it, that you feel you're at the top of your game. And of course, we just elected a president who is very close to you in age, and the current president is also very close to you in age. What do you say to those people who bring that up as an issue?
I think that's a legitimate issue. People are entitled, and they should consider that sort of thing. And I appreciate their concern for my health, but I'm thankful to say that I'm extremely healthy. And everybody who knows my family tells me that I take after my mother more than I do my dad. I say jokingly, I think I got my mom's jeans instead of my dad's khakis, but my mother retired at age 99. She was a full-time piano teacher. She had 25 students, and she hated to retire. She didn't want to, but she had macular degeneration, and she couldn't see the music anymore, so she had a reason to retire. She lived to be 105. When Moses was my age, he was leading the children of Israel to the promised land. So, people my age have a pretty good history. I could fall over dead in the next 5 minutes, and if I do, there's a mechanism for replacing me in our law. And so people don't need to be concerned about the fact that there would be a vacancy on the Supreme Court if I kick the bucket. But my mind is good. Nobody has said I'm not doing a good job. Nobody has said that I look bad or that I'm in any kind of immediate peril. So I thank people for being concerned, but I think their concerns are not necessarily well placed.
Yeah, something that I think is interesting to point out, because you bring up vacancies. You are the second most senior justice on the court. Is that correct? And by senior, I mean in terms of the longest tenure on the court.
That's correct. Chief Justice Randolph has been there about 4 years longer than I have. And the Chief Justice is determined by one's seniority or tenure on the court. And I am number 2. Justice King is number 3.
Gotcha. And so if there, and I want to be clear. I don't want to get in trouble with Chief Justice Randolph, but if he were to step down or retire or at some point, you would then become the Chief Justice of the court.
I would, and I have not necessarily aspired to that. The reason I went to the court was to write legal opinions, and I love doing that. I enjoy doing that. Chief Justice has a lot of administrative responsibilities that I'm ready to assume if I am called upon to do so. I've been on the executive committee now since Justice Dickinson left, and that was in 2017, I believe. So there are three of us on the executive committee. We do a lot of the administrative work, and I've assisted Chief Justice Randolph with that a lot. He is in good health, I'm happy to say, but he has had some medical absences. He's had some major surgeries, and during those times I have done the pinch hitting for him, and I know how to do that.
Going back to your experience just a little bit, I mean, you talked about the circuit court, and y'all handle a bunch of important cases, criminal cases and civil cases, and sometimes you handle sort of legislative cases where the governor and the legislature might be fighting. So you just handle a wide array of cases. But I mean, you could make an argument that the most important thing y'all do, or sometimes they're criminal cases, because that involves people's being locked up sometimes for life or even losing their life, and you come to that with an experience of sort of both sides of the issue, because you were a defense attorney and you also were a district attorney, a prosecutor. So I don't know. Do you sort of take your experience in the courtroom into account when you hear those appeals?
I certainly do, and I don't know how I could competently review those cases if I didn't have the experience that I do. You're right that I practiced in all the courts. I have been in public office twice, one a long time ago when I was district attorney, and now as a Supreme Court justice. In the interim, for right at 30 years, I was in private law practice. I haven't been in public office all this time, as has been implied by some of the advertising I've seen, but I did everything. I have done a lot of chancery work. You may know that I represented the Johnson family in the Robert Johnson airship proceeding back in the 90s. And every bit of that was in Chancery Court except the part that was appealed to the Supreme Court. There were 2 appeals to the Supreme Court. I argued both of those cases in the Supreme Court, and it was about Chancery Court law. Now, I must inject that though Senator Branning has some experience in Chancery Court, it's very limited. She doesn't seem to have litigated anything in any court, and she has not handled appeals. I started handling appeals to the Supreme Court when I was a very young lawyer, and the first appeals I argued to the Supreme Court were in the Capitol before the first Garten building was even built. And so I've been at the appellate level for a very, very long time. You know, you have to be a member of the bar of the Supreme Court, and I've been there longer than anybody that's on the Supreme Court now. So I just keep coming back to this idea of experience, my vast experience, plus Senator Branning's very, very limited experience.
Well, I mean, I could ask a bunch of questions about the case involving blues musician Robert Johnson, but I guess that's not what we're here for. So.
Well, it's a very interesting subject.
Yes, sir. But,
Justice Kitchens, you've spoken a good bit about Senator Branning's legal experience, but her other career is being a state senator and voting on legislation that comes before the state Senate. And I'm just curious. I mean, in judicial elections, I know campaigning can be hard because you can't say how you will rule on a case or on a potential case that would come before you, but I mean, I would assume you can talk about a candidate's track record and their history, and there is a clear history of her voting record on issues such as Medicaid, the state flag, criminal justice issues that she's voted on. Yet I haven't really seen a whole lot from you or your campaign talking about her voting record on some of those issues, and I'm just curious. Why is that?
The reason is that just about anything that could ever come before the legislature or anything that has been before the legislature can come back. And so those things often are later considered by the Supreme Court. So I can't express opinions. It's not proper for me to express opinions about anything that has the potential to come before the Supreme Court. That would be prejudging something, and prejudging prejudice is the last thing a Supreme Court justice needs to engage in.
So I understand that, and I guess it's kind of a fine line sometimes. For instance, Senator Branning voted against the state flag, changing the state flag. Can you say how you would have voted just as a Mississippian on that issue, or
no, sir?
Okay. And the state flag was an issue before the Supreme Court way back before you were on the Supreme Court,
and it can be again.
Yeah. So I guess this you may not want to answer this because this is sort of a policy question as well. But in Mississippi, we elect. I think all of our judges, which is you're campaigning right now,
except for municipal judges.
Except for municipal judges, that's right. Yet you can't really talk about how you will rule on a potential case, potential subject matter. Really, you can just go around and talk about why you feel like you're the best candidate. You can't even really directly ask people to donate to your campaign. Your campaign committee, has to do that. So I guess it sort of begs the question: do you think that our current system of electing judges is the best system? Would you like to see a different system?
I have looked at different methods of judicial selection around the country, and there is a great variety among the states. For instance, in Virginia, the legislature picks the Supreme Court justices and the Court of Appeal judges in the state of Virginia, and I think Thomas Jefferson might turn over in his grave if he knew that, but because that just flies in the face of separation of powers to me. But I think all things considered, we've got a pretty good system here. One thing that is really good about it is that we run in districts. And then once we're elected, we serve the whole state. But we run in districts instead of statewide. Now, Alabama runs statewide. So does Arkansas. And get this, so does Texas. The Supreme Court justices campaign statewide in Texas. I can't imagine.
That's a big state.
And a big expense, too. So, the expense of running for the Supreme Court here is horrendous. But it would be 3 times that if we didn't run in districts. So I think that's a good thing. I think the fact that we elect our justices and let the people do that is a very good thing, and I don't think the people have any appetite for changing that. And I don't either, because I can't think of any governor in the last 25 years that would have appointed me dog catcher. So I could get elected a couple of times, and I hope I get reelected this time.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of reelection, there will be a runoff election the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. I believe that's the 26th. I believe
that's correct.
So. And I hope you won't take offense when I say this, but I hope you will agree. I think a race for state Supreme Court justice does not attract the level of attention that, say, a governor's race does, or lieutenant governor. Although I certainly think that they're very important, very crucial races, because y'all decide a lot of important things that impact the state. But how do you plan to turn out the vote? What is your strategy for encouraging people to, return to the polls or even come vote if they didn't vote the first election, given that these races are typically not a lot of attention, and people politics may not be on their mind 2 days before a holiday.
Well, I learned about grassroots politics when my dad was running for alderman in Crystal Springs back in the 50s, and I learned about campaigning, and that's about all I know is grassroots politics. I go around and see people. I talk to them as much as I can. I get on the radio. I get in the newspapers, on TV a little bit, and try to let people know the importance of it. And the importance is this. Everything that we decide at the Supreme Court concerning legal issues establishes a precedent. People don't feel it, they don't realize it when it's happening to them, but everything that we do has the potential to affect every man, woman, and child in this state. It is of vital importance to our state, and I think most people realize that, but as you say, it's not the highest thing on their radar. So I'm going to try to elevate their awareness of it in these next couple of weeks. I'm sure Senator Branning will be doing the same thing. In that regard, we'll help each other because we'll get people talking and thinking about it again. But it is of paramount importance to our state, and I hope people will come to that reality.
And Taylor alluded to it, but it's important to stress, I think, that if you didn't vote in last Tuesday's election when you were on the ballot the first time, you can vote in the upcoming runoff election.
That's right. Yeah. This is not a party primary. This is a general election, and if you were unable to vote or forgot about it or whatever reason you might have for not having voted on Tuesday of this week, that does not stop you from coming to the polls or when they get absentee going again, and I don't know when that's going to be. Probably sometime next week you can vote absentee. But if you didn't vote the first time, you can and should vote the second time. And if you did vote the first time, come on back because there's not many things that are more important to you than your state Supreme Court.
And I would, not Chief Justice, but Justice Kitchens, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, for my wife's sake, about your ads, television ads. She likes those.
Well, we got started with that Get Jim Out of the Kitchen business back in 2008 as a means of name identification. Right. And we had no idea how much people would love that ad, but people think it's the most hilarious thing they've ever seen. And so we accommodated them in 16 and this time as well. But although that's a cute little ad, it's about a very serious subject matter, and I'm going to be a little more serious with the public in the next couple of weeks.
But just let me, can you get around the kitchen? Can you?
Only if I'm bringing in the groceries.
Well, Justice Kitchens, you've been very generous with your time, so thank you very much for coming in today. And hopefully this won't be the last time we have you on our podcast.
Well, you're most welcome, and I enjoyed it very much. Thank you for letting me come in.
Yes,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
As we cover the biggest political stories in the state, you don't want to miss an episode of The Other Side. We'll bring you more reporting from every corner of the state, sharing the voices of Mississippians and how they are impacted by the news. So what do we need from you, the listener? We need your feedback and support. Subscribe to our weekly podcast on your favorite podcast app or stream episodes online at MississippiToday.org/The Other Side. For the Mississippi Today team, I'm Adam Ganeshow. The Other Side is produced by Mississippi Today and engineered by Blue Sky Studios. We hope you'll join us for our next episode.